Welcome to the Hawks Talk podcast. All things Blackburn Hawks.
In behind the defence, cuts around, scores! Blackburn Hawks win this game 8 goals to 5.
All the latest news, player interviews and much more.
Shoots, scores!
Hawks Talk.
Welcome along to the first episode of the Hawks Talk podcast with myself, Graham Hamilton, and Johnny Combat as your hosts. Hello, Johnny. How are you doing?
I'm not so bad, thank you, Graham. Thank you for having me on. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm getting a bit bored, stuck in the house, but hopefully it'll all be over soon.
I know, yeah. I think we're finally starting to see a bit of light at the end of the tunnel now, aren't we? And hockey's back as well, which is always a good thing.
That's the best thing. That's the best news I could have right now. So for the first episode, what we wanted to do was introduce ourselves, explain what you can expect from the podcast going forward, and we're also going to be speaking to one of the Hawks co-owners as well. So the plan is, each month we're going to bring you the latest from all around the Hawks, interviews with the players and coaching staff, news from around the league as well, and much more. We want to engage the Hawks fans, new and old, as much as possible.
So like Graham said there, we're bringing you interviews from people of all over the club, players and coaches, and talking about the league as well. We'll also look to kind of get you guys on board as well. You can send in some questions when we have some players coming up. If you want to ask them something, we'll get that sorted out. And we can even look to getting some fans on as well and give their viewing on recent games. And all in all, we just want to get Hawks more involved with the fans. And this, I think, will be a good way of doing it.
Definitely, there's loads of exciting things to come. So, Johnny, let's talk about you first of all. How long have you been watching the Hawks for?
I think now, Graham, it's coming up to about 8 years. I can't remember the exact year it was, but I know it was the beginning when Jared Owen first came to the club. That's when my oldest brother, David, kind of was already coming to watch at that point, and he said, come along. And from there on, I was hooked, basically.
What was it, do you think, that made you come back?
A couple of things, really. I couldn't really put my finger on one thing. I'd say it was from the experience, watching the game. I walked in the rink completely clueless to the game, so seeing the speed of the game and what it was, and the physicality was good. And the match night experience, from the music to the announcement to kind of the games that I played on, the break, stuff like that, all just one big package, really, got me involved and got me loving it. And from there on, I was a fan going home and away and became to be a volunteer like I am today.
Over the period of time that you've watched the Hawks, would you say you've got one favourite player in particular?
Oh, that's an easy one for me. That would be Addy Brittle, when we had him back under Jared Owen, and obviously we went on to do the double-double. Just Addy, when he first came to the club, he's just his speed and the way he played the game, the way he read the game. He could be a top finisher as well. He was just something else watching Addy Brittle. If you needed a goal, the rule I always thought was give Addy Brittle the puck, he'll work some magic out of somewhere. And it was just fantastic to watch him play, supported by his brothers as well, because obviously we had Luke Brittle and Dangy Brittle in there as well at the time. What about yourself, Graham? When did you get watching Blackburn Hawks and how did it come about?
It was back in the 90s. It seems like a lifetime ago now. My dad got some tickets through his work at the time. We went to watch a couple of games, and it was around the time the Mighty Ducks film had came out. So I just kind of got hooked from there. And one of the first games I can definitely remember was when we played away at Manchester Storm. I think I was 95. We actually won that game. I think it was 12-9 to the Hawks, if I remember rightly. And I've been around the club on and off since then, really. Done some volunteering back with the Hawks F5 radio stuff. And it's definitely, I love the sport so much. Similar to yourself, it's the physicality, it's the momentum, it's the speed. It's such a beautiful sport to watch. And like you said, the atmosphere about it with the music and in between plays and stuff, it's just such a good experience. And I recommend it to everyone. I think everyone should watch a game of hockey.
Yeah, there's never a dull moment. It's probably the best way of summarising it, isn't it? There's always something going on, even if the play is actually not ongoing. There'll be music playing, there'll be some sort of thing you can see that's going on down on the ice, getting ready for the next restart in play. There's just never a dull moment from the minute that you walk in the rink to the minute you walk out.
Yeah, I mean, like in football, there's that cliche that it only takes a second to score a goal. In hockey, it takes less than a second to score a goal.
Yeah, 100%. You're playing on ice. You know, the puck. We've seen plays where a goal will be scored, the game will be restarted, and 5 seconds later there'll be another goal. So it is, as they say, the fastest sport in the world. So I picked Addy Brittle as my favourite player. You've obviously watched a lot longer than me and many more years to scratch your mind. But who would be your favourite player, Graham?
I knew as soon as I asked you that question, you were going to ask me the same thing. So I was just racking my brain to think. I can't name one. I've got to name three, and I'll tell you the names and for why. Bobby Haig, because I can remember watching him from like the early days and things like that, and just such a good hockey brain. He was always seemed to be like one step ahead of the play. Another one, the same as yourself, Adam Brittle, fantastic forward. Again, for a similar reason to Bobby, he was just always one step ahead. He could read the game, and like you say, he could pull a goal out of thin air. And the third one, Ollie Lomax, for one reason. I've watched the lad lie down on the ice and take puck shots at him while he's been led there. He's one of the smallest players, but the heart of a lion. Brilliant. And he's a nice lad as well.
Yeah, one of my memories that sticks with me and always will stick with me is being up at Whitley Bay, quite a hostile environment to go to as an away team and as an away fan, and it's difficult. But I remember Ollie doing his normal kind of do or die attitude, throwing himself in front of a puck. And that was the time I can't remember how many years ago it was. We'll have to get Ollie on one day and we asked him. I'd say about 3 or 4 years ago, it hit him in the wrist and he went down, carried on playing to finish the period off. And then as the second period was started, he come back up into the stands and like you should have seen the state of his wrist.
Oh yeah, I remember it was really ballooned up, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think he ended up having like 2 fractures in his wrist and was out for quite some time. But obviously that was a sad time for him to miss the game. But it just shows the player that he was, that do or die attitude, that he'd throw himself in front of a slap shot as he did on many occasions.
A friend of mine said about Ollie when I've spoken to him about him in the past was if you cut him in half, like he'd bleed Blackburn.
100%, yeah. And probably a few pucks in there as well.
Just rattling around.
Yeah.
So that's enough about myself and Johnny. Up next, we're going to be joined by one of the new co-owners of the Blackburn Hawks.
Hawks Talk.
Joining us on this first episode of the Hawks Talk podcast, we have Blackburn Hawks co-owner Carl Everitt. Carl, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks, Graham. Yeah, how are you, Johnny?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Yeah, not so bad, thank you, mate. Good to have you on with us.
Yeah, really appreciate you having me on the episode 1 of the Hawks Talk podcast. Yeah, exciting times.
The beginning.
Yes. Hopefully not of the end.
Definitely not. So I can imagine you've been really busy with stuff behind the scenes with the Hawks as well. So has that kept you fairly busy during this lockdown?
Yeah, I think with the Hawks and family and what I do outside of hockey, it's, considering it's very strange times, I've kept very, very busy, which has helped keep me occupied. Yeah, it's been very busy, actually.
So let's get right into it then. Let's get with the juicy questions, if you will. The last thing I remember sort of under the previous administration was the club announcing they were going to be competing in Division 2, the Laidler Conference. So just talk to us about what happened in between that announcement and then you and Graham taking control of the Hawks.
Well, I can't really talk for the previous administration, but ultimately I think everyone knew that the Hawks really were desperate for a rebuild. And Planet Ice, if they were going to continue with the club, we're going to do it from the Laidler. Graham and I got asked to maybe consider taking over the club. And to be honest, the rebuild was that big in our eyes that the lowest risk was to do it from Laidler and rebuild up from there to keep the costs down and keep everything reasonable. Now, when it came to momentum, once Graham and I took over, it actually, one thing led to another, and from player interest to sponsors' interest to our affiliation with Manchester Storm and Ryan Finnity's involvement. I think we knew that to play in Division 2 with our adaptive business model wouldn't entertain fans in a way that would invite recommendations to the club, and also we felt that it would have been disrespectful to other teams and the sport in general, to be honest. Because with all due respect, nobody particularly enjoys a 12-0 home win. We like nice, gritty, competitive games. And so really we felt that when we had some of the GB players talking to us and things like that, we couldn't have considered Division 2, I'm afraid. So even against our initial judgment, we needed to change our mind because it was best for the club.
Just one from myself now, Carl. So I've been watching Hawks for about 8 years, and I've kind of seen, obviously, during that 8-year period, there was the big Jared Owen era, where it kind of took us from kind of the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain, where we won back-to-back trophies in the 5-year kind of plan that he had. What, in terms of your 5-year plan, have you and Graham got in mind?
Well, I think the first thing, Johnny, and I remember those days as well, and is there was clearly a good culture or bond within the dressing room. I think there's that. But really for us, it's 5 years and beyond. So ultimately we want to build some solid foundations in all the areas, make sure we've got high standards off the ice. Because I think when you're asking players for commitment, hard work, passion, that needs to be driven throughout the club, not just on the ice. So for us, in order for us to deliver our goal of, wanting an experience deserving of recommendation from fans and spectators, from coaches and players, and from sponsors alike, bear in mind, these are people that are the lifeblood of the club. And in my opinion, they deserve better than they've had for the last couple of seasons. I think you can't go far wrong. If it's a win-win situation for everybody involved, I think success is inevitable, if I'm honest. We just need to continue, as I say, to work hard and stick to our values.
Talking of the core element that Hawks has as a family, kind of throughout there, when hockey comes back to normality and people can be back in the arena and, packing it out, would you have a main priority to kind of keep the core happy or to expand and get the family even bigger, or a bit of both?
I think the latter, absolutely. I think, we've got a strategy to re-engage with loyal Hawks fans, but not only that, we're realists, and I think we have to re-engage with fans that we maybe let down in the past and not really give them a reason to return. So they will be welcomed with open arms, no question. But also we would like to invite more people into the Hawks family. Because when we say all Hawks, we truly do mean it. And I felt that since I got involved, as from a fan's perspective 7 years ago, I felt part of it. So really, it's an all-encompassing thing, because hockey's a game that everyone can love it. So to me, we definitely don't want to forget these loyal Hawks fans, but ultimately, why not share the love, as they say?
And from you, kind of your loyal and your new fans that will be coming into the rink, what's kind of the match night experience that you obviously, and I can't imagine it's cemented yet, but what have you and Graham got in mind for the new match night experience?
I think the first thing that people deserve is consistency. I think, we're trying to do everything to a high standard, as I mentioned before, with passion. So expect to see something that's consistent to a high standard that will entertain you, not just for the first week you come for, but for the second, third, from great music to energy on the ice, to fun games, to merchandise, opportunities to interact with players after the game for autographs and things. Basically all the things that got me hooked sort of 6-7 years ago on hockey. And the things that people really that are memorable, that really do stick with people. Because it is a game where you do have unusual access to things like players, and the players are very accommodating. So, and they certainly will be moving forward. So we're hoping that it's just going to be a night to remember and great value for money.
Just something you touched on a little bit earlier. In September, you announced that Ryan Finnerty would be joining the Hawks. He's currently GM and head coach at Manchester Storm. How did that come about?
Wow, well, that's an interesting one, actually. How that came about was really down to John Neville. So for those people that may have heard, I've been involved in the Rob Craig Memorial game for charity over the last few years. And we wanted to try and attract as big a names as possible to increase the profile of the event. And John put me in touch with Ryan. And from there, actually started to build a relationship with Ryan. And Ryan was actually very impressed with the event. So when it came to the Elite League sort of possibly not going, I sort of touched base with him and asked him if he'd help us grow our coaching team and mentor and everything else to give us a high standard to live up to, basically, as a club. So we had a few chats with Ryan, and to be honest with you, he was on board straight away, because for us, we want an affiliation with our junior setup, as well as the Storm Academy, or even Widnes or Bradford. There's no allegiances in that sense. We want everyone to be able to play hockey, as many people as possible. So Ryan's come on board, and he's going to be bench coaching this mini series. So you're going to see Ryan in the Hawks apparel, coaching the team with support from Lee Pollitt, Ollie Lomax, and Dave Clancy, who's our goalie coach. So we really do have a strong sort of coaching team. So Ryan is fully on board with us, and hopefully will continue to be for the future.
What's Ryan's involvement with the Hawks going to be like when the Elite League starts up again, which I guess will be in September, looking from the stuff I've seen on Facebook, so the 21-22 season?
Yeah, I think fundamentally Ryan's biggest priority is the Manchester Storm. Obviously, that's his love. Now, because of the affiliation, he's still going to very much have a consultation role, director of hockey type role. That's to be decided, but he's certainly... what he's offered is the chance for some of our coaches to go over to Storm and be coached on the Storm sessions. So it isn't a short-term, what I would call a Harlem Globetrotters type moment where we're just showing off. We are really building a relationship with Stone where, I have a good relationship with one of their owners, Jamie, as well. So we want to create something whereby there's real pathways from not only the, our division from the juniors right up to the elite league in time. So it's one step at a time. But yeah, he's a great guy. We do enjoy working with Ryan.
Okay, so with this kind of stream of kind of the cup coming up soon that we Hawks have been involved in, Carl, obviously we've seen signings kind of come quite thick and fast with this competition starting off pretty soon. Can you give us a bit of an insight of kind of what kind of the involvement you and Graham have had in the kind of signings, if any, and if you can maybe release any new signings to us now on the podcast?
It wouldn't be fair to release anything on the podcast. I'd love to. What I'll say is there's another 6 signings coming, creating a fantastic 26-player roster for the Blackburn Hawks, giving us plenty of opportunities, utility players. We've got obviously some players from the past. As far as Graham and I's involvement, we are facilitating the coaches. Ultimately, we cannot and will not have too much influence on the decision on the roster. The responsibility and accountability lies with the coaching staff and basically help them set up for success ultimately. So it's not really for us to get too involved in, and that's harder for Graham than it is for me. But I think ultimately, as passionate people, we understand our strengths and our weaknesses, and there's no point having coaching staff and telling them who to recruit as far as the roster is concerned. We are extremely excited, and we built a roster that, back to the Harlem Globetrotter, sort of comment. We could bring in a lot of superstars, no problem. But ultimately, it wouldn't be the same team that's around in September. So therefore, we've built a lot of players that majority of them do want to stay with us and still want to stay with us past September. So it is a long-term sort of structure that we've put in place.
I can imagine you've had a lot of players getting in touch with you from various leagues and teams with the chance of players getting some game time where they've not been able to play for such a long time now. You mentioned just then about wanting players to have some longevity, and that's been important while you've been building the roster, not players that have just wanted to get a couple of games under the belt and then move on.
Yeah, we don't get wrong. There's a couple of players that we're sort of enticing to hopefully keep at the club. But there were offers from many players that we had to decline, I'm afraid, because we didn't want players that just wanted to use for the mini-series, if I'm honest. It was really about wanting to play for the badge, really, wanting to play for the Hawks. And some of the players we've announced have played for the Hawks before, in the Invincibles with Matt Viney and Chris Butler. And, there's some real key guys there, but not only key guys, on the ice, but great guys off the ice. But for all of their well-being, we've put extra sessions on for them to help with with the cardio and the training and things. But they're just a really good bunch of guys who are getting on, all of them, really, really well. So really starting to build a bond already, which I think is going to be evident on the ice come this Saturday.
I definitely can't wait for it. Being a fan of the Hawks for a number of years now, it's been refreshing for me to see some new faces join the club, and also great to see players like the likes of Sam Dunford, Chris Butler and Matt Viney come back in. Like, for example, Sam left a while ago and I really rate him as a player. So from a fan perspective, it's great to see these names come back in and to be enticed to play for the club again.
Yeah, I've sort of spent some time on the ice with some of these lads, and you see the talent and you just think, they've left for a reason. So hopefully we're given a reason to come back and to stay. When we talk about wanting an experience deserving of recommendation, it is for the players as well. So if we want players to stay and maybe recommend other players, ultimately we're not going to overpromise. We're not going to promise the world. But what we will promise is we'll do what we say we're going to do. So we won't let them down in that respect. And we'll show them respect in return. So I think if we start off with that in the relationship, then why would they want to play elsewhere?
In terms of kind of players we've seen return as well, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, there's some kind of junior players we've seen who re-signed again from this year. One of them that springs to mind straight away is Jack Murray. How key is that for you, and obviously maybe more for Graham, because obviously with his son Ollie came through the junior system to have a career with Blackburn Hawks. How key is it for you to kind of keep the players like Jack Murray here at Blackburn and, be the core of Hawks for the years to come?
It's a great question, Johnny. I think to us as a family community club, local people, sort of coming through the ranks, succeeding and making it to the senior team is a sign of success for the club as a whole. The whole setup from the juniors, and shows that the pathway can work when everyone works together. So, Jack and Ronnie and young Bailey Hodkinson, getting announced, and what a great guy he is. And even James Riddock and things like that. And as you mentioned before, Ollie Lomax, these are real success stories. I think if you can take somebody from not skating and then playing senior hockey for their local team, I think it's a massive accolade to the coaches and the junior setup that have brought them along. And we're hoping that in the future we can continue working with the junior Hawks Academy to bring more and more homegrown talent through to the senior team.
So the academy is still going to be run as sort of a separate entity to the Hawks?
Yeah, and I think that's important to start with. I think when we've only just taken over the club, relationships need to be formed. We all want the same thing, which is to bring youth, exuberance, and ultimately bring the sport of hockey to as many juniors as possible, and then give them a chance to make it through to senior hockey. We've only just sort of taken over. So I think what has to happen is we need some consistency. We need to show that, we want to set an example of what it is to play for a senior Hawk. And I think in the last couple of seasons, I don't believe that that's been delivered. So we need to give them a reason to want to be a Hawk in the senior team. So that's what we're on with. And obviously COVID has really put play to moving that forward with the juniors sooner rather than later. But to be honest, I've got contacts with lots of the people on the committee, and I'm confident that in time we can build a really great relationship. I know that we've offered the junior coaches to come on with Ryan and the coaches on our session, so we can work together to have a real good, strong coaching setup within Blackburn.
So just moving on to the upcoming streaming cup that you've got featured yourselves, Nottingham Lions, Sheffield Scimitars and Widnes Wild. Where did that come from? Was it your idea? Was it the EIHA's idea?
I don't think we can so much take direct credit for it. I believe it's been led by the IHA and Andrew Miller in particular, I would say. We were the second club in the country to have been granted elite status. And that was, again, part of the reason to move to Division 1 was the opportunity to train under very, very strict guidelines, unbelievably strict, but absolutely adequate for the times that we're in. And from there, I think when more and more teams joined that, I think it made it plausible that a mini series of sorts could be put together. So there was going to be more teams involved, but unfortunately, some of them took the decision to walk away at this moment in time, which I do respect. But really, it just became obvious that there was plenty of teams training, and therefore, should we try and get some COVID-safe hockey played? So I think it was just an organic growth from that idea, really.
How difficult was it to organise under the current lockdown restrictions?
Well, what I will say is Adi Charnock, who's our team manager, has played a blinder. He's worked so hard. He's our COVID officer. He's helped us achieve all the COVID guidelines with many others as well. And I'll be honest with you, there's been times where we've been questioning whether it's been worth it. But I think when you see the look on the players' faces when they hit the ice, we saw it on last Thursday, and that made it all worth it, to be honest with you. So to us, it wasn't a case of should we or shouldn't we. It's a case of when are we going to see players play again. So the sooner the better, really. So and it's ended up being the right decision, I think, for the club.
What sort of restrictions have you had to put in place in terms of like testing and things like that? Are you having to do like they do with sort of football on a like twice weekly basis, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So every player, every volunteer, every coach, every manager, every person involved in the club must be tested on a Thursday and also before any game, so home or away. So those are strict tests whereby the person is tested and then quarantined until the test has come back as negative, and the temperature's checked and the symptoms are checked, and then only then can they enter the arena either at home or away. So before they travel, they'll be tested. So they won't go on the coach travel before they've actually come back as negative. So there's lots of factors and lots of volunteers, and Lynn Charnock, who's heading up, she's our team medic, who's heading up the COVID testing, and the team there. And it's not particularly comfortable, but we understand that the goal is to make sure that we see those lads on the ice. So That's what we keep trying to tell ourselves, that that's the right thing. So it's incredibly strict. There's a limited number of people allowed in the arena, and everyone has to be carrying out a role. There's social distancing in play. Everyone has to wear masks off the ice. So all the measures that are in place that we've been asked to achieve by the DCMS, the government and the IHA have been met, because there is no cutting corners when it comes to people's health.
And going forward with this, when it kicks off this weekend, this streaming cup, what can we expect to see from Hawks TV, which has since been announced recently, for the everyday fan like myself? How can we watch the games, and what can we expect to see?
Well, I'm hoping what you're going to see, back to our values, is a level of professionalism and a standard. It's cool, to be honest with you, the team there, Oz Phillips and Brian and Stuart Cunliffe have done an incredible job of bringing together a professional streaming service. What you'll see is live links to interviews with players, which is COVID-safe interviews. You'll see stats. You'll see some promotional things supporting our sponsors. You're going to see a custom-built streaming service that we hope to continue in a normal season for those people that can't make it to the home game. So it's not necessarily something just for the series. We want it to stick around. Whether it stays on YouTube for free is a different matter. But I think the big decision was always, for this mini-series, people didn't need to be charged more. They needed hockey. So if we can give hockey to as many people as possible for free of charge, then that's what we'll do. But I think, with the commentary team, who are fantastic in my opinion, and all the work that's going in to make it technically a very good product, I think people will feel that we are probably a team above our league, really, in regards to the product that people are going to see. And hopefully everyone enjoys Hawks TV for what it is.
With the cup being sort of a new thing, maybe hopefully a one-off thing, because hopefully the lockdown restrictions won't last for that much longer. Have you got any expectations to win it? Do you want to go out and win it, or is it just for a bit of fun for the lads to get some ice time as well?
I think winning it would be a nice thing, of course it would. But I think ultimately it's about seeing the right behaviours, the right attitudes, the right disciplines, people doing what the coaches want them to do. Winning it hopefully will be a byproduct of that. But from the ownership team, it's really about cementing the bonds, the relationships, and making sure the players know exactly what's expected of them, and they try to carry it out to the best of their ability. And if the coaching strategy is right, then we believe that will end up in victory and success.
You said a moment ago that you'd been on the ice with the players while they've been training. Is there any particular players that you think stand out, particularly from some of the newer names that we've not seen before at the Hawks?
I think there's a good. I think when you've got Finlay Ulrich on there from Manchester Storm and Jacob Ludwig, I think you've got a couple of players there that are absolutely, fantastic. But even, there are, plenty of other players that also got some real talent and some real speed. Lee Pollitt's looking very, very good. I know he's a fan favourite, but he's looking good. He's looking quick. Rick Bentham, a very popular guy in the rink. Congratulations, Rick. I know you've just had a baby, so congrats to that. But ultimately, I think Finlay Ulrich is incredible, and hopefully we'll keep him on a two-way when it comes to a normal season, and you'll see him at the rink more than just the mini-series. Fingers crossed.
I think with the Hawks, we essentially play in what is the third tier of British ice hockey. But if you remember this from a few years ago, Johnny, we had that cup with some teams from our league, the Morley Conference, and the then EPL League. And I don't think at that time the Hawks were that far behind them. So as a standard, the potential has always been there as a club. Maybe I'm being biased just because I'm a Hawks fan, but I think from around that time, we've had a solid team. We've kept a lot of those foundations, and now we've added some more pieces to the puzzle under the new ownership of yourself and Graham. So I'm very positive about it all.
Yeah, I think when you add to that, Graham, the gaps. So there was gaps in coaching goalie netminders. So bringing Dave Clancy on board really allows us to have strength in depth and real strength in all areas. And I think I definitely wouldn't criticise Harrison Walker or Nick Strappans or any of the players. But ultimately, I think if every person is supported and coached and trained, both on the technical side of the game as well as the mental side of the game, I think it just stands as well for when we go a goal down or whatever else. So I think absolutely the club has a standard because it has a reputation, and people expect, and rightfully so. But hopefully we can, what I will say is the efforts you're seeing off the ice, you're going to see on the ice and more from the players. And I think that comes from wanting to play for the badge.
So Carl, myself and Graham, as we've talked about at the beginning of this podcast, we have a background in kind of Hawks media. It's how we kind of got to kind of where we are today. But going forward now, under the new leadership of yourself and Graham, what is the plan kind of media-wise with Blackburn Hawks?
Ultimately, we want to try and attract as many people to the club as possible and give them the opportunity to have the information to hand. So from the Hawks Talk podcast, as we're on today, Hawks Media will ultimately consist of, you've got Hawks TV, you've got the Hawks Talk podcast, and very soon is the Blackburn Hawks app, which is going to be available on Android and Apple, which is going to allow people to access a lot of the functions you see on the website, from the Hawks store to booking coach travel to buying 50/50 online raffle tickets to buying jerseys, and literally have Hawks in your hand, so to speak. So we're trying to build a product that isn't just one-dimensional. So it should be easy to access Hawks information and highlights and interview details and things like that. So really want to become as professional as budgets will allow. But ultimately, it's about how much effort we want to put in. And there isn't a limit to how much effort we want to put in. We want to do the best we possibly can.
Just going back to what you mentioned there about kind of professionalism, and doing as best as you can within a budget. Would it be, a little bit crazy and kind of to wonder is the aim maybe to end up in the Elite League one day with Blackburn Hawks?
The truth is, no, that's not in our desire at this stage. I think it's important to do one step at a time. I think if ultimately with the right behaviours, as I mentioned with the players, if we're doing all the right things and budgets allow and things like that, then I'll never say no 100%, but it's certainly not in our short to medium term plan now. I think that would be wonderful in the arena that we're in, but I think it's all about a sustained model for the club that ensures that it can consistently deliver that experience. And I guess time will tell. Now, if we do make it to the Elite League, then that would be a success story on its own, I guess.
Just a couple more things before we end this first episode of Hawks Talk. Two subjects that we think need mentioning and people that need honouring as well. Recently, Eddie Brigdale, who is the honorary lifetime president of the Hawks, sadly passed away. He's been a fantastic person to have around the club for such a long time. I've seen him at home and away games for a very long time. I know you have, Johnny, and yourself, Carl.
Yeah, it was extremely sad to lose Eddie. And obviously the year previous, Joan. Two stalwarts of Blackburn ice hockey, but been ice hockey fans for a long, long time, and it did feel like we'd lost members of the family. So for us, it was imperative, although we couldn't change the outcome, that we honoured them in the way that we have, with both supplying a memorial jersey that was actually draped on Eddie's coffin at his funeral, which was a very touching moment, as well as on all of the jerseys now having the Joan and Eddie Brigdale memorial badge, which will stay with the team home and away for as long as Graham and I have got the club. And that's what we're about. It's sort of those people have done a hell of a lot behind the scenes. But it's people like that make this club. So for us, we'll continue to support the family as much as we can, but also make sure we don't forget Eddie and Joan.
There's one particular moment regarding Eddie Brigdale that always kind of stands with me, and I think if you cast your mind back to it, Graham, you'll remember this as well. When Hawks won the very first playoff up at Billingham over the two-legged affair, when it was done there, I remember the celebrations that happened on the ice, and I'd give it, say, a couple of minutes into those celebrations, the players come over towards the fans and they looked for Eddie, and I think it was Aaron and Ollie in particular that kind of found Eddie and waved him down to the ice. And they actually got him on the ice to kind of have a photo with the trophy and just kind of celebrate with the players, because, to put it bluntly, he absolutely bled Blackburn Hawks. There's a lot of things that Eddie did to help the club through his years of supporting them. And this was kind of one of the many ways that the players on the ice were able to repay by kind of having that moment with him where he felt as part of the team with them. And I'm sure it's something that he loved and enjoyed.
Yeah, I remember that very well. He was always a person you'd see at games, always had a smile on his face and a handshake. He was just all round a lovely bloke. Same goes for his wife, Joan, as well. They were always there. I can remember times going to away games with the Hawks with 2 lines, and they'd be there week in, week out without fail. And it was just fantastic to see.
Absolutely. I think, they meant so much to so many people. And you mentioned there, Johnny, and rightfully so, Aaron and Ollie. And, the Hawks Golf Day Committee, of which I'm part of, we're absolutely honoured to be able to make sure that every year they're playing for the Brig Deal Shield. So again, they're not lost in the past. They're going to be remembered moving forward as much as we can with the club. So because I think it's easy to forget what fans put into a club, and there was, in my opinion, very few better fans than, if any, than Joan and Eddie. I
would definitely agree with that. Also, something that needs mentioning is Hawks forward Rick Bentham lost his dad last year, I believe.
Yeah, I believe it was June last year. Unfortunately, we lost Paul Bentham suddenly. It was, real sad moment. A real big guy, an influential guy in Rick's life, and been around Hawks hockey for a long time. We'll look to honour his memory when we play our next home game against Widnes Wild. But it is, you do forget the characters that we had around and the impact it's had. And to be fair, it's really important that Rick comes back to Blackburn for this mini series, because this is his home, and we want to be here to support him all the way. And now he's got a new baby Bradley. Congratulations, Rick and Kate. Then hopefully you can look forward and see things in a more positive light after a sad situation. So we do want to honour and respect Paul Bentham. Yeah.
Okay, Carl, so just one last question for yourself and then we'll get off. We're kind of going to put this to everyone we have on the podcast, just kind of get a different feel for the people we have on. What would you say is your number one kind of favourite memory of the Hawks in your time that you've had involved with us?
Oh, I've got so many of them. I think it would have to be being very, very lucky. I came in being a Hawks fan, it's only 7 years ago, and the club, has got a real heritage. But I think seeing them win the double-double, the Invincibles, and seeing what that meant to all the fans and just the passion of the players and everything else, I think you don't quite appreciate how much it means to people until a situation like that comes along. And I was incredibly lucky. I didn't have the 20 odd years before that of maybe not quite getting there. But it made me incredibly proud straight away. And I think that's something I'll never forget. I shed a tear, I'm not going to lie. But it was something that really will stick with me forever. And I guess that's what drives me to hopefully try and emulate that in some way, although it won't be easy. But hopefully try and bring some more success back to the club, because I know that's how it made us all feel.
Oh, I 100% agree with what you said there, especially, being a fan of similar kind of years as yourself, seeing that double-double and what it meant, especially to some of the local players as well we had then, your Ollie Lomaxes, your James Riddocks and so forth. It was, something that I could just, with a flick of a switch in my head, can recall those moments. And
absolutely.
Hopefully in the near future, maybe something similar like that.
Yeah, and if we do that, I've got goosebumps thinking about it actually. So it's sort of it's powerful. The only word I can use is it was a powerful moment, and to sort of to see those lads put the body on the line and then see them with tears of joy and everything. It just tells you what it does mean to these boys when they put themselves out there on the ice. So yeah, hopefully we with all due respect to those guys that achieve that massive feat, we can make the club proud again. Hopefully.
That's fantastic. So thank you, Carl, for taking the time to talk to us.
It's a pleasure.
And we'll hopefully have you on a future episode.
Thankfully, yeah. Thanks for not being too mean. Appreciate it. Take care.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Graham. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Carl. Thank you.
Hawks Talk.
So you've just heard our first interview there with co-owner Carl Everitt. Graham, what was your take on it all there? I think it was an absolute breath of fresh air to hear what kind of Carl's thoughts are with the acquisition that in the position that he's in now and what the plan is going forward. It was just, it's put a smile on my face, to put it bluntly.
It's all very positive, and like myself and you, we've been around the Hawks for a long time, and it definitely got to that point where it needed this change. It needed a new broom, so to speak, and I definitely think that Graham and Carl are the right people to take it forward and take it to that next step and hopefully start winning some trophies and things again.
Yeah, it's obviously, there's a lot of things that have been a shame the past 12 months, everything that's going on with kind of coronavirus. But obviously, it's sad that they've had to wait this long to get the opportunity to showcase what they can do. But obviously, with this streaming cup that's going to start in the next coming days and carry on for a few weeks and months, it'll be interesting to see what we can see on the ice performance-wise and the experience they could put together for the fans, even though they're not in the rink. And, fingers crossed, it'll soon be September again and we'll be playing a game in the rink with us all there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they can perform endurance wise and things, because hockey's such a high intensity and fast sport. We've not playing for so long. It's surely going to have a bit of effect on them. But I can't wait for the hockey to be back. I'm a big NHL fan. I'm a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. So I've still had a bit of hockey, but Blackburn Hawks are my team, and I'm so excited to have a couple of games back. And like you say, look forward to September with all these new changes that Carl and Graham are bringing into the club and bring back some glory to Blackburn.
Yeah, I totally agree. You had to sadly throw the Penguins comment in there, which I will let slide a little bit, but I will put you on the spot now. Just for one last question while we close this first episode off. The roster's now been announced. What stands out to you and who and why?
I'm a big Sam Dunford fan. I said it earlier when we spoke to Carl. I think he's a great forward. He's very good on the forecheck and solid player. Chris Butler as well. Matt Viney. I'm excited to see them lads back, but also excited to see some of these younger Storm lads like Finlay Ulrich and like Jack Murray's a good player as well. Rick Bentham. There's quite a solid squad they've put together, and it looks like it stands a very good chance of winning this cup. Maybe I'm being a bit too biased or a bit too positive, but I think they can do it, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's a well-balanced squad. It's probably the best way of summarising it, from the young players like your Jack Murray and your Bailey Hodgkins, who we're going to see for the first time in a Hawks jersey this weekend. And then at the other end of your scale, you got your more experienced players that we know, your Rick Benthams and your Matt Vineys. And I think it's going to be, really exciting to see, and I look forward to seeing what Hawks TV do over the coming weeks with the production. And obviously, we'll pick up our podcast for episode 2 in a few weeks or so's time with a new guest, and I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about.
Hawks Talk.
Thank you all for tuning in to the first episode of the Hawks Talk podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on whichever platform you're listening on. As we said before, we want to get you, the Hawks fans, involved as much as possible. So if you have any players that you'd like to see us have on as guests, any suggestions or questions for future shows, just send us an email, hawkstalk@blackburnhawks.com.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys. We'll see you soon. Take care.
See you later.